I honestly thought the nightmare was over when Hathaway Mutual sent the offer letter. I was 33 years old, broke, and desperate for a win. Then came the email pausing everything for additional verification. My stomach dropped because I knew exactly what that meant. Someone had made a call. I thought I was alone in this fight, but I was wrong. My grandmother had been waiting for this moment, and she had a drawer full of evidence to prove it. The steam from the iron hissed against the cheap polyester of my black blazer, rising in a warm, damp cloud that smelled faintly of lavender detergent and desperation. I smoothed the lapel with the palm of my hand, checking for wrinkles that refused to fade. It was Monday morning. The calendar on my wall, a free one from a local real estate agent, had today circled in red ink. Final interview, Hathaway Mutual. I was 33 years old. I had $74 in my checking account and a menacing stack of overdue notices tucked inside a kitchen drawer I avoided opening. But today, none of that was supposed to matter. Today was the finish line. Hathaway Mutual was not a glamorous place. It was a mid-sized insurance services firm tucked into a beige office park off the interstate. The kind of place with industrial gray carpeting and fluorescent lights that hummed at a frequency only dogs could hear. To me, it looked like paradise. It offered health insurance. It offered a matching retirement plan. It offered a salary that would allow me to buy groceries without mentally calculating the tax before I reached the register. I unplugged the iron and let it cool on the counter. My phone sat on the kitchen table. Silent. I was waiting for the email that would confirm the time for the final sign-off meeting. The hiring manager, a kind woman named Brenda, had practically winked at me during the last round. She had asked when I could start. She had walked me to the elevator. You do not walk a candidate to the elevator unless you are planning to keep them around. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the last of the instant grounds, and sat down to wait. The morning sunlight slanted across the linoleum floor. Highlighting the dust I had not had the energy to sweep, I felt a guarded optimism, a fragile little bird fluttering in my chest. After months of gig work, delivering food, transcribing audio files for pennies, walking strangers' dogs, I was finally going to be safe. The phone buzzed. I snatched it up, my heart hammering a sudden, violent rhythm against my ribs. It was an email. The subject line read, "Update regarding your application at Hathaway Mutual." I swiped it open. My eyes scanned the preview, expecting a time and a Zoom link. Instead, I saw a block of text that felt like a physical blow to the stomach. "Dear Alice, thank you for your continued interest in the senior coordinator position. We are writing to inform you that the final offer meeting scheduled for today has been postponed pending additional verification. We will be in touch if we require further information. Regards, Hathaway HR team." The silence in the apartment suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. Postponed, pending additional verification. I read it again, then a third time. The words did not change. The tone was polite, corporate, and detached, but the shift was violent. Friday. I was the top candidate. Monday morning. I was pending verification. I set the phone down on the table. My hands were trembling. Verification usually meant a background check, but I had authorized that 2 weeks ago. I had no criminal record. My credit score was low, battered by a year of underemployment, but it was not catastrophic. I had never been fired for cause. I had verified my degree. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the back of my neck. I could not just sit there. If I sat there, I would start imagining scenarios that would paralyze me. I needed to know. I dialed the number for the recruiter, a man named Jason who had been enthusiastic and chatty throughout the process. He usually picked up on the second ring. This time, it went to 4 rings, then 5. I was about to hang up when the line clicked open. "This is Jason," he said. His voice was tight. Gone was the friendly banter about weekend plans. "Hi. Jason, it is Alice Sanchez," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, cheerful, professional. "I just received an email about the meeting being postponed. I wanted to check in and see if there was any specific documentation you needed from me to clear up the verification process." There was a pause. It was too long. It was the kind of pause people make when they are trying to figure out how much truth they are allowed to tell. "Hi, Alice?" Jason said. He sounded tired. "Right. Yes. We just have a standard internal review process. A concern was raised regarding some past employment history. So we just need to run a few things down. It is just standard process." "A concern?" I asked. The word hung between us. "What kind of concern?" "Jason, I am happy to provide references or clarify anything. I am not really authorized to go into details right now," he said. "Like I said, it is just a pause. If we need anything, we will reach out." "Jason," I said, pressing just a little harder. "Is this about my time at the logistics firm? Because I have the layout of that layoff if you need it." "It is not about the layoff," he said quickly. Then he stopped himself. "Look, Alice, I have to jump on another call. Just sit tight. We will let you know." The line went dead. I stared at the black screen of my phone. A concern was raised. My mind began to race, spiraling into the darkest corners of my history. Had I forgotten to pay a parking ticket? Did an old landlord claim I damaged an apartment? Was this about the time I disputed a charge on my credit card? The logic of anxiety took over, turning small, forgettable moments into career-ending crimes. I stood up and paced the length of my small living room. 4 steps to the window, 4 steps back. The bird in my chest was gone, replaced by a stone. I felt exposed. Someone had said something. Jason had sounded embarrassed. Not for himself, but for me. He sounded like a man who had just been told a dirty secret about someone he liked. My phone buzzed again. I jumped, nearly knocking over my coffee cup. I looked at the screen. It was a text message. The name on the screen was David, my supervisor from a temp job I had worked 6 months ago, filling in at a warehouse front office. We had gotten along well. He was a good guy, a father of 3 who hated office politics. I opened the message. "Hey Alice, heads up. I got a weird call this morning from someone asking about your time here. They didn't say who they were with, just doing a character check. They asked if I ever had issues with you and petty cash. I told them you were solid, obviously, but the way they asked, it sounded like they already had an answer they wanted. Just thought you should know." I read the text twice. The words blurred. Petty cash. I had never stolen a dime in my life. I was the person who returned the extra change when the cashier made a mistake. I was the person who panic sweated if I accidentally walked out of a store with a pen in my pocket. Petty cash. Theft. The connection snapped into place with the force of a physical slap. This was not a background check error. This was not a credit report issue. This was sabotage. I sat back down at the table, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. The room felt cold. Someone was calling my past employers. Someone was calling the places where I was trying to build a future. And they were not just asking about my work ethic, they were planting seeds. They were using words like theft and cash. Who would do that? I looked at the text from David again. It sounded like they already had an answer they wanted. I knew who it was. I did not want to believe it. I wanted it to be a mistake, a clerical error, a malicious stranger with the wrong number. But the specific nature of the accusation, theft, was a signature. It was a fingerprint. My parents. I closed my eyes and pressed the heels of my hands into my sockets until I saw stars. I had gone no contact with them 2 years ago. It had been a slow, painful severance, like cutting off a limb with a dull knife. They were people who thrived on control, on the narrative that I was incompetent, reckless, and in need of their guidance. When I stopped asking for their guidance, they stopped pretending to be parents and started acting like creditors collecting a debt. But this, actively hunting down my job prospects, calling strangers to call me a thief? I felt a wave of nausea. I grabbed my notebook, the one I used for interview prep, and turned to a fresh page. My hand shook as I wrote the date. Monday, 9:15 in the morning. Email from Hathaway. Offer paused. Monday, 9:30. Call with Jason. Mentioned a concern and past employment history. Monday, 9:45. Text from David. Caller asked about petty cash theft. I looked at the timeline. It was pathetic. It was 3 lines in a spiral notebook. But it was the only defense I had. I realized then how incredibly vulnerable a person is when their reputation is attacked in private. There is no trial. There is no judge. There is just a phone call you never hear, a question asked in a concerned tone, and then a door quietly closing in your face. I combed through my email, searching for anything suspicious. Had I left a digital trail? Had they hacked my accounts? I changed my passwords, my fingers fumbling over the keys. I checked my LinkedIn. I had blocked them. But had I blocked their friends? Their flying monkeys? I needed to know for sure. I needed to hear it in their voices. I picked up the phone again. I scrolled down to the blocked list and found the number labeled "Do Not Answer." Mom. I unblocked it. My thumb hovered over the call button. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my heart rate. I could not scream. If I screamed, I lost. If I cried, I lost. I had to be cold. I had to be a reporter asking for a comment. I pressed call. It rang 3 times. Then, a click. "Alice," my mother said. Her voice was not surprised. It was calm, pleasant, eerily normal. It was the voice she used when she was ordering deli meat at the grocery store. "We were wondering when you would call." "Did you call Hathaway Mutual?" I asked. I did not say hello. I did not ask how she was. "We are just looking out for people, Alice," she said. The collective we. My father was likely sitting right there, listening on speaker, nodding in agreement. "That is not an answer," I said. "Did you call the recruiter and tell them I stole money?" I heard a sigh on the other end, a long, disappointed exhale that I had heard 1,000 times in my childhood. It was the sound of her martyrdom. "You have always had a problem with boundaries. Alice," she said. "You take things that are not yours. You take liberties. You take advantage. It is our responsibility as parents to make sure you do not hurt anyone else." "I have never stolen anything," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "You are lying to my employers. You are costing me my livelihood. That is illegal." "It is not a lie if we believe it is true," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if she were sharing a confidence. "And we know you. Alice, we know what you are capable of when you get desperate. We are just making sure everyone has the full picture. Transparency is important." "Stop it," I said. "Stop calling them. If you call them again—" "You will what?" she interrupted, her tone hardening instantly into steel. "You have no money. You have no power. You are a girl who cannot even keep a temp job. Do not threaten us, Alice. We are the only ones who care enough to tell the truth about you." "I am hanging up," I said. "You do that," she said. "But remember, Alice, you can run away, but you cannot hide who you are. We will always be there to remind people." Click. She hung up first. She always hung up first. I dropped the phone onto the couch as if it were burning. I stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, the silence ringing in my ears. They admitted it. They practically bragged about it, protecting people. They had twisted their sabotage into a moral crusade. To them, destroying my life was an act of public service. I felt dirty. I felt like I needed to scrub my skin with steel wool. The worst part was the tiny, treacherous voice in the back of my head that whispered, "Maybe they are right. Maybe I am bad. Maybe I deserve this." That was their real power. It was not just that they could take away a job. It was that they could make me question my own reality. I could not stay in the apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. I needed to go somewhere safe. I needed to go to the one person who had never looked at me like I was a crime scene waiting to happen. I grabbed my keys and my purse. I did not bother changing out of my interview suit. I walked out the door, locking it behind me, and marched to my beat-up Honda Civic. The drive to my grandmother's house took 20 minutes. It was a small, weathering bungalow in a neighborhood that had seen better days, but the lawn was immaculate, the hedges trimmed into perfect geometric shapes. Maribel Sanchez did not tolerate disorder. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. I looked pale, my eyes wide and frightened. I pinched my cheeks, trying to bring some color back. I did not want to worry her. She was 82 years old. She did not need my drama. I got out of the car and walked up the path. I had a key, but I knocked. It was polite. "Come in, Alice," her voice called from inside. I pushed the door open. The house smelled of lemon polish and roasted peppers. It was the smell of my childhood, the only version of it that felt safe. Maribel was sitting in her armchair by the window, a book open on her lap. She looked up as I entered. She did not smile. She did not look surprised to see me in the middle of a Monday. "Grandma," I said, and my voice cracked. I cleared my throat. I had a bad morning." Maribel closed her book and set it on the side table. She looked at me with sharp, dark eyes that had seen 8 decades of nonsense and had patience for none of it. "They called the insurance company," she said. It was a statement, not a question. I froze. I had not told her about Harthway. I had not wanted to jinx it. "How did you know?" I asked. Maribel did not answer immediately. She stood up, her movement slow but deliberate. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she moved with the gravity of a tank. She walked over to the tall oak cabinet in the corner of the living room. "Sit down, mija," she said. "You look like you are going to fall over." I sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching my purse in my lap. Mom and Dad, they told the recruiter I was a thief. I lost the offer, or it is paused, but it is gone. Grandma, they are calling everyone. Maribel opened the bottom drawer of the cabinet. It rolled out with a heavy wooden rumble. She reached in and pulled out a thick manila folder. It was not a new folder. The edges were soft and worn, and the tab was labeled in her precise, cursive handwriting. Employment calls. She walked over and dropped the folder on the coffee table in front of me. It landed with a heavy thud. "Open it," she said. I looked at her, then at the folder. My hands were shaking again as I reached out and flipped the cover open. Inside, there were pages and pages of handwritten notes. I recognized Maribel's script. June 4th, 2022. Alice applied at the logistics center. Linda called the house, asked for the number for their HR department, said she needed to verify a reference. September 12th, 2023. Alice interview at the bank. Heard Robert on the phone in the kitchen, telling someone about missing jewelry from the house. No jewelry was missing. January 8th, 2024. Alice moved to the new apartment. Linda told Aunt Sophia she was going to call the landlord to make sure he knew about the credit issues. I flipped through the pages. There were dates. There were times. There were direct quotes. It went back years. It went back to before I had even cut them off. "Grandma," I whispered. "What is this?" "I have been listening," Maribel said. She sat down in the armchair opposite me, folding her hands in her lap. "I have been listening to them for a long time. You think they are quiet? They are loud. They are arrogant. They think because I am old. I am deaf. They think because I am their mother. I am on their side." I stared at the page from 3 years ago, said she needed to verify a reference. "You knew?" I asked. I felt a confusing mix of emotions. I felt vindicated because I wasn't crazy. I felt terrified because the scale of it was massive. And I felt a spike of betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were not ready," Maribel said. Her voice was firm, not apologetic. "If I told you 3 years ago, you would have screamed at them. You would have cried. They would have denied it. And you would have believed them because you wanted to believe them. You would have thought I was a senile old woman trying to stir up trouble." She was right. 3 years ago, I was still trying to win their approval. I would have defended them. "I overheard your mother 4 years ago," Maribel continued. "It was at Christmas. You had just left. She was on the phone with her sister. She was bragging. Alice, she said she had a list of places to contact whenever you tried to get too independent. She said it was the only way to keep you grounded." "A list," I repeated. The word tasted like bile. She keeps it in her day planner, Maribel said. She writes down every time you mention a job, every time you post something online. She tracks you like a project. I looked down at the folder. It was a dossier of my own sabotage. Every time I had failed, every time a job had mysteriously gone cold, every time an opportunity had evaporated, it was here. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't incompetence. It was them. I feel sick, I said. Good, Maribel said. Sickness is better than confusion. Confusion makes you weak. Anger makes you focus. What do I do? I asked. They destroyed the Hearthway offer. I cannot get that back. If I apply somewhere else, they will just do it again. I can't work. If I can't work, I can't pay rent. If I can't pay rent— You are spiraling, Maribel said sharply. Stop it. She reached out and tapped the folder with her index finger. I did not just write things down. Alice, I saved things. I have voicemails on my old landline machine. I have letters they wrote to me complaining about your theft. I have proof that they have been planning this narrative for a decade. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the steel in her spine. She wasn't just a grandmother. She was a matriarch who had survived wars and poverty and loss. She had seen the rot in her own son and daughter-in-law. And instead of looking away, she had taken notes. Why? I asked. Why go to all this trouble? Because I knew this day would come, she said. I knew they would push you until you had nothing left but the truth, and I knew you would need weapons. She stood up and walked to the kitchen. You look terrible. You are going to sleep here tonight. You are going to eat something that is not instant coffee, and tomorrow, we are going to look at this folder properly. Grandma, I can't fight them, I said. They are relentless. They have money. They have the appearance of respectability. Who is going to believe me over them? Maribel stopped in the doorway. She turned back to me, her expression fierce. I cannot undo what they have done, she said. I cannot get you that job back. But I prepared for this. I have been preparing for this while you were busy trying to be a good daughter to people who wanted you to be a failure. She pointed a finger at me. If you are ready to stop being their story, we do it carefully. We do not scream. We do not post on the internet. We do what they did. We document. We verify. And then we destroy their lie. She turned and walked into the kitchen. I heard the sound of the kettle being filled with water. I looked down at the folder again. Employment calls. I ran my hand over the worn paper. It was heavy. It was real. For the first time all day. The panic receded, replaced by something colder, harder. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness, and I had the evidence. I closed the folder. The interview was over. The job was gone. But the work had just begun. The morning sun hit the kitchen table with a brightness that felt aggressive. I had slept on Maribel's sofa, a lumpy floral affair that smelled of dust and old lavender, and I woke up with a crick in my neck and a heavy, leaden feeling in my gut. It took me a moment to remember why I was there. Then I saw the folder. It was sitting exactly where we had left it the night before. Employment calls. Maribel was already awake. She was standing at the counter, brewing coffee in a percolator that rattled and hissed like a dying engine. She was wearing her housecoat, a quilted pink thing she had owned since I was in middle school. But her hair was brushed and pinned back severe and tight. Drink, she said, sliding a mug across the table toward me. Then we work. I wrapped my hands around the ceramic, seeking warmth. I do not know if I can look at that again. Grandma, you do not have a choice, she said. She sat down opposite me, her movements precise. Ignorance is not protection. Alice, ignorance is how they have kept you on a leash for 10 years. Open it. I opened the folder. In the daylight, the extent of Maribel's documentation was terrifying. It was not just a list of grievances. It was a forensic accounting of sabotage. She had organized the notes chronologically, starting from the year I graduated college. I picked up the first sheet. It was a page from a yellow legal pad. May 12th, 2014, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Alice called to say she got the internship at the design firm. At 4:30, your mother called the house. She asked for the name of the firm. She said she wanted to send flowers. I gave her the name. 2 days later, the offer was rescinded. I remembered that. I remembered crying in my bedroom, thinking I had failed the background check because of a speeding ticket. I flipped to the next page. August 3rd, 2015. Alice applied for the assistant manager role at the bookstore. Mother called the store manager directly. She pretended to be a concerned neighbor. Said she saw Alice taking packages from porches. My hand flew to my mouth. Packages? I have never stolen a package in my life. It does not matter, Maribel said, her voice dry. It is the seed. They plant the seed, and then they let human nature do the rest. Managers are busy. They do not want drama. If someone calls and says a candidate is a thief, they do not investigate. They just move to the next resume. As we went through the years, a pattern emerged, stark and undeniable. The sabotage was not random. It was targeted. When I worked gig economy jobs, driving delivery, walking dogs, freelance transcription, there were no calls. Those jobs had no benefits, no stability, and no upward mobility. They kept me living paycheck to paycheck. They kept me vulnerable. But the moment I applied for something with health insurance, a 401k, or a title that commanded respect, the calls happened, usually within 24 to 48 hours. They do not mind if you work, Maribel observed, tapping a page where I had successfully held a bartending job for 6 months. They mind if you succeed. They mind if you are safe. Because if I am safe, I do not need them, I said. The realization was cold. And if I do not need them, I might tell people what they are really like. Maribel nodded. She reached into the pocket of the folder and pulled out a small, rectangular object. It was an old digital voice recorder, the kind students used in the early 2000s. It was scratched and battered. I bought this after the 3rd time, she said. I plugged it into the landline. I told myself it was to help me remember appointments, but I knew. She pressed a button. There was a crackle of static, and then a voice filled the kitchen. It was my mother. The sound of her voice made my skin crawl. It was not the screeching, angry voice I heard during our fights. It was the voice she used for the outside world, soft, reasonable, dripping with maternal anxiety. I just wanted to reach out because I know Alice is applying there. The recording played. And look, I love my daughter. She is a sweet girl, but we have had some issues with her taking things. Small things at first, but then money. We are handling it as a family, but I would hate for her to be put in a position of temptation. It would not be fair to her, or to you. The recording clicked off. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. She sounds so nice, I whispered. She sounds like she is trying to help me. That is the weapon, Maribel said. If she called and screamed, they would think she was crazy. But this sounds like a mother trying to protect her troubled child. It makes the employer feel like they are doing a good deed by rejecting you. A history of taking things, I repeated. She made me into a criminal, a petty criminal. That is why the recruiter yesterday asked about a concern. That is why David texted me about petty cash. I felt a sudden, desperate need to fix it. The Hearthway job was paused, not rejected. Maybe I could still save it. Maybe if I explained. I grabbed my phone. I am going to email Jason. I will offer him everything. My bank statements, my credit report, references from every person I have ever known. Be careful, Maribel warned. Do not sound desperate. Desperation looks like guilt. I spent the next hour drafting the email. I kept it professional, stripping out the panic that was clawing at my throat. Dear Jason, I understand that a verification concern has been raised. I take my professional integrity very seriously. I am writing to offer any documentation you might need to clarify this matter. I can provide additional references, a full background check, and a certified credit report. I am confident that any derogatory information is the result of a misunderstanding or a personal grievance unrelated to my professional conduct. Please let me know how I can proceed. I hit send. We waited. The morning dragged on. I helped Maribel water her plants. We ate toast. I checked my email every 30 seconds. At 11:15, the reply came. Hi, Alice. Thanks for the note. At this time, we have just decided to take a little additional time to review the candidate pool. We have your information on file and will reach out if the status of the position changes. Best, Jason. It was a polite, corporate door slamming in my face. He did not ask for the credit report. He did not ask for references. He did not want to know the truth. The seed had been planted, and it had grown into a weed that choked out the opportunity instantly. He does not believe me, I said, putting the phone down. He thinks I am a risk. It is easier to hire someone else than to figure out if I am actually a thief. Then we stop asking them to believe you, Maribel said, and we start forcing them to listen. She stood up. Get your coat. We have an appointment. With who? A lawyer, she said. I made the call while you were in the shower. Dana Klein's office was located in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a donut shop. The sign on the glass door just said, Klein Law, Employment Family. Inside, the carpet was worn, and the waiting room chairs were mismatched. But the receptionist was kind, and the coffee in the corner was free. Dana Klein herself was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a blazer that looked like she actually worked in it. She shook my hand with a grip that was surprisingly strong. Maribel told me the basics, Dana said, gesturing for us to sit. Her office was cluttered with files, stacked high on every surface. Parents sabotaging employment, defamation, loss of income. It is a messy situation. It is not just messy, I said. It is destroying my life. I lost a job offer this morning because of it. Okay, Dana said. She opened a fresh notepad. Walk me through it. Specifics. I told her everything. The text from David, the call with the recruiter, the voicemail Maribel had recorded, the years of coincidences, the phone call with my mother where she admitted she was protecting people. Dana listened without interrupting. Taking notes in a shorthand I could not read. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and tapped her pen against her chin. Here is the reality, Dana said. You have a few potential claims here. Defamation is the big one. Tortious interference with a business relationship is another. If they are lying to employers to stop you from getting hired, that is actionable. So we sue them? I asked, feeling a flicker of hope. Ideally, yes, but practically, it is hard, Dana said. She leaned forward. The problem is proof. You have a recording of your mother on Maribel's machine from 4 years ago. That establishes a pattern, which is great. But for the Hathaway job? Do we have proof it was her? Did the recruiter say her name? Do we have a phone number on a call log? No, I admitted. The recruiter just said a concern was raised, and David said someone called. That is the hurdle, Dana said. In court, your parents will deny it. They will say it was not them. Or they will say they were just giving an honest opinion about your character, which is protected speech to a degree. We have to prove they made a false statement of fact, that you stole money, and that they did it with malice. She admitted it to me on the phone, I said. Did you record it? Dana asked. No. Then it is hearsay, Dana said. I believe you, but a judge needs evidence. She tore the sheet off her notepad. We need to build a trap, Dana said, and we need to build a shield. We are going to do 2 things simultaneously. What things? First, the shield, she said. We are going to create a reputation packet. I want you to get sworn statements from every boss who liked you. I want police clearance letters. I want credit reports. We build a physical document that proves you are trustworthy. The next time you apply for a job, you hand them that packet before they even do the background check. You inoculate them against the poison. And the trap? Maribel asked. We need them to do it again, Dana said calmly. But this time, we need to catch them. We need a call log. We need an employer who is willing to go on record saying, yes, Jane Sanchez called me and said Alice stole $500. We need a paper trail that links the lie directly to them. How do we do that? I asked. We bait them, Dana said. We create a situation where the temptation to sabotage you is too high for them to resist. But we do it with an employer who knows what is coming, someone who is ready to document the call. It sounded dangerous. It sounded like playing games with my life, but looking at the stacks of files in Dana's office, I realized I was already in a game. I just had not been playing. Okay, I said. What is the first step? I am going to draft a cease and desist letter, Dana said. It is a warning shot. It tells them we know what they are doing and that we are watching. Sometimes that is enough to scare bullies into silence, but usually, with this kind of pathology, it just makes them angry. They will be angry, Maribel said. They believe they are righteous. Let them be angry, Dana said. Angry people make mistakes. We need them to make a mistake. We left the office an hour later. I felt lighter, but also more afraid. We had a plan, but the plan required escalation. It required provoking the bear. When I got back to my apartment that evening, the provocation had already arrived. There was a package sitting on my doorstep. It was a cardboard box, taped shut with heavy packing tape. There was no return address, but the handwriting on the label was unmistakable. It was my father's block print. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table. I stared at it for a long time before I grabbed a knife and slit the tape. I opened the flaps. Inside, there was a sticky note attached to the top item. It read, in my mother's handwriting, "Return what you took." I looked at the contents. It was a box of garbage. Not literal garbage, but emotional debris. There was a porcelain figurine of a dancer I had when I was 7, now chipped. There was a t-shirt I had worn in high school, faded and stained. There was a stack of birthday cards I had given them over the years, returned to me. There were old hair ribbons, a broken calculator. It was a keepsake box, but it felt like a threat. Return what you took. What had I taken? The figurine was a gift. The t-shirt was mine. The cards were things I had given them. The message was psychological. They were telling me that everything I had, everything I was, belonged to them. They were rewriting history to make every object in my life stolen property. It was gaslighting made physical. I picked up the porcelain dancer. I remembered loving it. I remembered my father buying it for me after a recital. Now, holding it, I felt like a thief. I felt a wave of shame so hot and intense it made me dizzy. Maybe I did take it. Maybe I was not supposed to have it. I dropped the figurine back into the box. It clattered against the calculator. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't Maribel or a lawyer. I needed someone my own age. I needed Janelle. Janelle Rowe had been my best friend since sophomore year of college. She was the one person who knew about my parents, or at least, the surface level of it. She knew they were difficult. She knew I didn't talk to them. I met her at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. It was raining, a gray drizzle that matched my mood. Janelle was already there, nursing a latte. She looked tired, her curly hair pulled up in a messy bun. "Hey," she said, giving me a half smile as I sat down. "You look like you have been through a war." "I have," I said. "I lost the Hearthway job." "Oh no," Janelle said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Alice, I am so sorry. What happened?" "My parents," I said. "They called the recruiter. They told him I was a thief." Janelle's hand went still in mine. She pulled it back slowly. She did not look shocked. She looked uncomfortable. "Janelle?" I asked. She looked down at her coffee cup. She was twisting her ring, a nervous habit I had known for years. "Alice," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something, and I'm really scared you're going to be mad at me." "What is it?" My stomach tightened. "About 6 months ago," Janelle said, not meeting my eyes. "I got a message on Instagram. It was from a burner account. No profile picture, no name." "What did it say?" "It said, 'Be careful loaning money to Alice Sanchez. She has a habit of not paying people back. Just a friend looking out for you.'" I felt the blood drain from my face. 6 months ago? Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to hurt you, Janelle said, looking up, her eyes wet. I knew it was fake. I knew it was probably your crazy parents. But I also thought, what if it wasn't? What if you were in trouble and you were embarrassed? I didn't want to make you feel bad, so I just blocked the account and ignored it. You ignored it, I said. But did you believe it? Janelle hesitated. Just for a split second, but I saw it. I made sure not to offer to pay for dinner for a while, she whispered. Just in case. I am so sorry. Alice, I feel terrible. I sat back in my chair. The isolation washed over me. It was absolute. Even Janelle, even my best friend, who knew me better than anyone, had been infected by the doubt. The seed had been planted in her mind, too. Be careful. She takes things. It is okay, I lied. My voice sounded hollow. I understand. No, it is not okay, Janelle said. I should have told you. I should have showed you. If I still have the screenshot. Can I send it to you? For your lawyer? Yes, I said. Please. I left the coffee shop 10 minutes later. I could not sit there and make small talk. I felt radioactive. I felt like everyone who looked at me was wondering what I had stolen. I drove back to Maribel's house. I did not want to be alone in my apartment with the box of garbage. Maribel was in the living room, watching the news. She muted the TV when I walked in. One look at my face told her everything. They got to Janelle too, I said, dropping my keys on the table. They messaged her 6 months ago. Anonymous warning not to loan me money. Maribel sighed, a deep, rattling sound in her chest. They are thorough. I will give them that. They salt the earth. I have no one. Grandma, I said, sitting on the floor at her feet. I felt like a child again. They have poisoned the water with everyone, employers, friends. Everyone looks at me and sees a risk. Maribel reached out and stroked my hair. Her hand was rough, calloused from years of gardening. You have me, she said, and you have something else. She leaned over and opened the drawer of the end table. She pulled out a thick envelope. It was not part of the employment calls file. This was legal stationery, heavy and cream-colored. I have been keeping a secret from you, Maribel said, and I was going to wait until I died to let you find out. But I think you need to know now. You need to know that you are not destitute. She handed me the envelope. What is this? My will, she said, and a trust document. I looked at the papers. They were full of legal jargon, but my eyes caught a paragraph highlighted in yellow. The Maribel Sanchez Revocable Trust. Years ago, Maribel said, when your grandfather passed, he left me a substantial insurance policy. Your parents think I spent it all on the house and my medical bills. They think I'm living on Social Security? She smiled, a small, grim smile. I am not. I saved it. I invested it. And 5 years ago, I put $75,000 into a trust for you. $75,000? I stared at her. Grandma, it is freedom, she said. But I could not give it to you. If I gave it to you, your parents would have found out. They would have guilted you, or tricked you, or bullied you into giving it to them. They would have said you owed them for raising you. They would have drained you dry. She pointed to a clause in the document. Protective provision. No distribution shall be made to the beneficiary if there is evidence of coercion or duress by immediate family members. The trustee is instructed to withhold funds if the beneficiary is in contact with Peter or Linda Sanchez regarding financial matters. I locked it up, Maribel said. I made it so they could not touch it, and I made it so you could not give it to them even if you wanted to. I held the document, tears blurring my vision. It wasn't just money, it was a shield. She had known for years that they would come for me, and she had built a bunker I didn't even know existed. Why tell me now? I asked. Because you are scared you are going to be homeless, Maribel said. You are not going to be homeless. You have a safety net. But we are not going to use it yet. We keep it secret. If they know you have money, the attacks will get worse. They will sue you. They will claim you stole it from me." "They would do that," I said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Maribel said. "So we let them think you are broke. We let them think you are desperate, and we use that desperation to set the trap." The next morning, I went back to Dana's office. I signed the engagement letter. I handed over the screenshot Janelle had sent me. A grainy image of a DM that read, "Watch your wallet" around her. Dana drafted the cease and desist letter while I sat there. It was beautiful. It was cold, precise, and threatening. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Sanchez, we represent Alice Sanchez regarding her claims of defamation and tortious interference with her employment prospects. We have evidence that you have systematically contacted prospective employers and made false, malicious statements regarding Ms. Sanchez's character and history. You are hereby directed to cease and desist all contact with any past, present, or future employers of Ms. Sanchez. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action." Dana printed it out. She stamped it. "We send this certified mail," Dana said. "They have to sign for it. They will know we are serious." "And then?" I asked. "And then we wait for them to retaliate," Dana said. "Because they will." I walked out into the parking lot. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. I held the copy of the letter in my hand. It felt light, just a piece of paper. But it was the first time in my life I had ever drawn a line in the sand. I thought about the box of garbage in my apartment. I thought about Janelle hiding her wallet. I thought about the recruiter's polite refusal. Maribel was right. This wasn't about a job anymore. It wasn't about a paycheck. I looked at my reflection in the car window. I looked tired. I looked older than 33, but I didn't look like a thief. It was about identity. They had spent 10 years writing a story about me. A story where I was broken, dishonest, and dependent. They had told that story to everyone who would listen. They had told it so many times. They believed it. Now, I had to burn that story down. I had to prove that I was who I said I was. And I had to do it in a world that loved a scandal more than it loved the truth. I got in the car and started the engine. I was ready to fight. The post office smelled of dust and adhesive tape. I stood at the counter, watching the clerk peel the backing off the green certified mail sticker. He smoothed it onto the envelope with a practiced thumb. "Return receipt requested?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I need to know exactly when it is delivered." $7.85, he said. I paid with cash. I watched him drop the envelope into the outgoing bin. It looked indistinguishable from the other mail. Just a white rectangle with a window for the address. But inside, it carried a bomb. Dana Klein had drafted the cease and desist letter with surgical precision. It did not plead. It did not argue. It stated facts. It explicitly cited the dates of the calls we knew about. It defined their actions as tortious interference and defamation of character. It demanded that they immediately stop contacting any past, present, or future employers. And most importantly, it included a preservation notice. You are legally required to preserve all phone records, emails, text messages, and voicemails related to Alice Sanchez. Destruction of this evidence will be considered spoliation. I walked out of the post office into the bright afternoon sun, feeling a strange mix of nausea and power. I had done it. I had formally declared war on my own parents. For 2 days, nothing happened. The silence was heavy. I checked the tracking number on my phone every hour. Arrived at distribution center. Out for delivery. Delivered. Signed for by L. Sanchez. My mother had signed for it at 10 in the morning on a Thursday. I imagined her standing in the foyer of their pristine suburban house, holding the envelope, reading the return address. Klein Law. I imagined the confusion turning to shock, and the shock turning to the cold, hard rage that I knew so well. I was waiting for the explosion. I expected a screaming phone call. I expected them to show up at my door, but the blow, when it came, did not come from them directly. It came from my hallway. I was coming home from a grocery run on Saturday morning, struggling with 2 bags of rice and beans, when my landlord, Mr. Henderson, stepped out of his office on the ground floor. Mr. Henderson was a decent man. He was in his 60s, wore suspenders, and generally left his tenants alone as long as the rent checks cleared. He had always been kind to me. "Alice," he said. He sounded awkward. He didn't look at me. He looked at a spot on the wall just above my left shoulder. "Do you have a minute?" My stomach tightened. "Sure, Mr. Henderson. Is everything okay? Did the rent check bounce?" No, nothing like that," he said, waving a hand. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I had a strange phone call yesterday. I wanted to ask you about it." I set the grocery bags down on the floor. I could feel the blood draining from my face. "What kind of call?" "A woman," he said. "Didn't give a name. Said she was a reference checker for a housing application. She asked if you paid on time, which I said you did, but then she asked some specific questions." He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "She asked if I had ever noticed any missing items after maintenance visits. Tools, supplies, copper wire. She asked if other tenants had ever complained about packages disappearing from the mailroom." The hallway seemed to tilt. It wasn't just jobs anymore. They were going after my home. They were painting me as a neighbor who stole from the people she lived with. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice trembling. "I have lived here for 2 years. Have you ever had a complaint about me?" "Never," he said quickly. "That is what I told her. I said Alice is quiet and pays her rent. But she was very persistent. She said, 'You might want to check your inventory, just to be safe.' It left a bad taste in my mouth. 'Alice, I just wanted to let you know. It is harassment,' I said. 'My parents are trying to hurt me. I'm currently in a legal dispute with them, and they are making false calls to damage my reputation.' Mr. Henderson looked relieved to have an explanation, but I could see the shadow of doubt in his eyes. He nodded, backing away toward his office. "Right. Family trouble. I understand. Well, as long as the rent is paid, we are good. But maybe keep a low profile for a bit. Yeah?" He closed his door. I picked up my groceries. They felt leaden. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs. They had called my landlord. They were trying to make me homeless. If Mr. Henderson had been less secure, or if I had been late on rent even once, that call could have been an eviction notice. I called Maribel immediately. "They escalated," I said as soon as she picked up. "They called the landlord. They asked if I stole copper wire." "Copper wire?" Maribel repeated. "They are improvising. They are trying to make you look like an addict or a desperate criminal." "I can't live like this, Grandma," I said. "I can't wait for the next call. I can't be afraid every time the phone rings or someone knocks on my door." "Then we stop waiting," Maribel said. "We set the trap." The next morning, I met with Dana and Maribel at the law office. The mood was grim. Dana read the notes I had written about Mr. Henderson. "It is consistent with their pattern," Dana said. "They are expanding the blast radius. They want to isolate you completely. If you can't work and you can't rent, you have to go back to them. That is the goal. Forced dependence. We need to catch them in the act," I said. "You said we need a trap." "We do," Dana said. "We need a controlled environment. We need an employer who is real, but who we can monitor." We chose Northgate Supply. It was perfect because it was boring. Northgate was a large industrial distribution company on the edge of town. They sold pipes, valves, and fittings. They were not a small family business. They were a corporate entity with a rigid, documented HR process. They recorded calls, they had timestamps, and they were hiring for an inventory coordinator. It was a job I was overqualified for, but it was believable that I would apply. "Here is how we do it," Dana instructed. "You apply, but you do not use your personal cell number. You do not use your primary email." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. "I have set up a dedicated voice-over IP number," she said. "It looks like a local area code. If anyone calls it, The audio is automatically recorded and emailed to my server. You use this number on your resume. You also use this new email address I created for you. So if Northgate calls me, it goes to you? It forwards to you, Dana corrected. But we capture the metadata, and if your parents call Northgate, we will know because Northgate logs incoming calls to their HR line. We are going to create a closed loop. I went home and updated my resume. I changed my contact info to the trap number. I wrote a cover letter that was professional, competent, and unremarkable. I submitted the application to Northgate Supply. 3 days later, I got an interview. It was a strange experience. I sat in a conference room with a woman named Sarah, the hiring manager at Northgate. She was nice. She asked me about my experience with spreadsheets and inventory software. I answered her questions. I smiled. I gave examples of my organizational skills. But the whole time, a voice in my head was screaming, "I am using you. I am using you to catch my mother." I felt guilty. Sarah was just trying to fill a job. She didn't know she was a pawn in a family war. But I had to do it. I had no other way to get the evidence I needed to stop them. At the end of the interview, Sarah closed her folder. "You are very impressive, Alice," she said. "You are honestly a bit overqualified, but if you are looking for stability, this is a great place. I am going to recommend we move forward." "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "I really appreciate that." I went home and immediately emailed Dana. "Phase 1 complete. They like me." "Now," Dana replied. "We deploy the shield." I sat down at my computer and composed an email to the general HR inbox at Northgate. Copying Sarah. "Dear Sarah and Northgate HR team, thank you again for the opportunity to interview today. I am very interested in the position. I wanted to be proactive and transparent. I am currently dealing with a family dispute that has unfortunately involved some harassment. A family member has previously attempted to interfere with my employment by making false claims to hiring managers. If any such concerns arise during your vetting process, please let me know immediately so I can address them directly. I am happy to provide references and documentation to verify my integrity. Sincerely, Alice Sanchez." I hit send. It was a gamble. Telling an employer you came with drama was usually a death sentence, but Dana had explained the logic. If you warn them, and then the call comes. The caller looks malicious, not credible. You frame the narrative before they can. Now, we waited. My parents, meanwhile, did not stay silent. They responded to the cease and desist letter not with a lawyer, but with a public relations campaign. 2 days after I sent the Northgate email, my phone started buzzing with notifications. My cousin in Florida, my aunt in Texas, my godmother who I hadn't seen in 5 years. They were all forwarded the same email. It was sent from my mother's account, with the subject line, "Urgent Family Prayer Request." "Alice," I opened it, my hands shaking. "Dearest family, we are writing to you with heavy hearts to ask for your prayers. As many of you know, Alice has been struggling for some time. We have tried to support her, but she has pulled away from us and has fallen into a very dark place. This week, we received a threatening legal letter from her. It breaks our hearts to say this, but she is attacking the very people who have tried to save her. We believe she is unwell and lashing out because of her mental state. The letter accuses us of terrible things that we would never do. We are not angry, only worried. Please pray that she finds clarity and peace. And please, if she reaches out to you, be careful. She is not herself right now. Love, Linda and Peter." I read it twice. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. They took a cease and desist letter, a document that proved they were harassers, and turned it into proof that I was mentally unstable. They inoculated the entire family against believing me. If I tried to show my aunt the evidence, she would just shake her head and say, "Linda told me you were having a breakdown." "They are incredible," I whispered to the empty room. "They are absolutely incredible." I felt a sob rising in my chest, hot and sharp. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that they could lie so easily, so publicly, and look like saints while doing it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reply to everyone and attach the voicemail of my mother calling me a thief. But I didn't. Maribel had warned me, do not engage, do not defend. If you argue with a liar in public, you just look like two liars arguing. I drove to Maribel's house instead. I needed to see her face. I needed to remember that someone in this family actually knew the truth. Maribel was dressed when I arrived. She was wearing her Sunday coat and holding her purse. "We are going out," she said. "Where?" I asked, wiping my eyes. "The bank," she said. "The safe deposit box." We drove to the First National Bank downtown, a building with marble floors and heavy brass doors. It was quiet inside. Maribel signed in at the desk, her signature shaky but legible. The clerk led us into the vault. The air inside the vault was cool and smelled of old paper. The clerk unlocked box number 412, slid out the long metal tray, and left us alone in a small private viewing room. Maribel opened the lid. There were stacks of savings bonds, the deed to her house, and a few pieces of jewelry. But on top, there was a white envelope. It was sealed with tape. On the front, in Maribel's handwriting, it said, "Alice, 2012. 2012, I said. I was 19. I was a sophomore in college. "Yes," Maribel said. "Open it." I carefully peeled the tape back. The paper was brittle with age. Inside were 3 photocopied sheets and a piece of notebook paper. I looked at the photocopies first. They were bank statements. Peter and Linda Sanchez. Joint checking. I scanned the lines. September 4th, 2012. Transfer to A. Sanchez Student Ace. $2,000. September 6th, 2012. Transfer from A. Sanchez Student Act. $1,800. October 1st, 2012. Transfer to A. Sanchez Student Act. $1,500. October 3rd, 2012. Transfer from A. Sanchez Student Act. $1,500. I don't understand, I said. They were transferring money in and out of my account? Read the note, Maribel said. I picked up the notebook paper. It was my father's handwriting. I recognized the jagged, hurried scrawl. "Mom, I need to borrow $2,000 from your emergency fund. I moved some money through Alice's student account to cover the car payments, so it wouldn't show up on the main statement before the refinance went through. I will put it back. Do not worry. It is just for convenience." I stared at the note. Move some money through Alice's student account. He was laundering money, I said. Not drug money, just hiding spending. He was moving family money through my account to hide it from the bank? Or from you? From the bank, Maribel said. They were refinancing the house. They needed their main accounts to look perfect, so they used your account as a dumping ground for the messy expenses. They moved money in, paid bills, moved money out. But I was 19, I said. I didn't know. They had access to my account because they set it up for me when I was 16. Exactly, Maribel said. You did not know, but look at the statement again. Alice, look at how it looks on paper. I looked. Transfer from A. Sanchez Student Actee. It looks like I was taking money, I whispered. If you didn't see the deposits, it just looks like withdrawals. It looks like I was draining family funds. And that, Maribel said, tapping the paper, is the backup plan. If the thief story ever got challenged, if you ever demanded proof, they kept these records. They could show them to anyone and say, "Look, she took thousands of dollars from us in college." I felt a physical sickness in my gut. It was a retroactive frame job. They had used my identity as a financial shield for themselves, and in doing so, they had created the evidence to destroy me later. But then a deeper, more painful realization hit me. "Grandma," I said, my voice barely audible. "Do you remember when I was 20? They told me they were short on money for my tuition. They told me I had cost them so much. I felt so guilty. I dropped a class. I got a second job at the cafeteria. I spent years feeling like I was a burden. like I owed them for their sacrifice. I looked at the statements. The money was there. They weren't short. They were just hiding it. They made me feel guilty for money they were hiding, I said. The anger started to burn through the shock. They planted that feeling. They made me walk around with my head down, feeling like a bad daughter, feeling like a thief, before they even started the smear campaign. They groomed me to feel guilty so I wouldn't fight back. Maribel nodded. Her eyes were sad. Control is not just about fences. Alice, it is about making the prisoner believe they belong in the cell. They needed you to feel like you owed them. A child who feels she owes a debt will never leave. I put the papers back in the envelope. My hands were steady now. The sadness was gone. I just felt cold clarity. This is identity misuse, I said. Dana told me, using someone's name and financial accounts without their consent to hide assets. It is fraud. It is, Maribel said, and we have his confession in his own handwriting. We left the bank. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. I felt different. I wasn't just fighting for a job anymore. I was fighting for the 19-year-old girl who had eaten ramen noodles and cried herself to sleep because she thought she was bankrupting her parents. I was fighting for her. I scanned the documents and sent them to Dana that night. Dana called me immediately. "This is huge," she said. "This proves intent. It proves they have a history of manipulating your financial identity. But Alice, listen to me. This makes them dangerous. If we expose this, they could face legal trouble for bank fraud. They are going to fight like cornered animals." "Let them fight," I said. "Okay," Dana said, "but stay focused on the trap. Northgate is the key. The bank stuff is leverage. But Northgate is the smoking gun for the current harassment." 2 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was the dedicated line, the trap line. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen. Incoming call. Northgate Supply HR. I took a deep breath. I let it ring twice. I answered. "This is Alice," I said. My voice was calm, professional. "Hi, Alice. This is Sarah from Northgate," the voice said. She sounded different than she had in the interview. She sounded hesitant, stiff. "Hi, Sarah," I said. "It is good to hear from you." "Alice, I wanted to follow up on your interview," she said. "We were prepared to extend an offer. The team really liked you." "I am very happy to hear that," I said. I waited. "However," Sarah said, "we received a phone call this morning. It was unusual. The trap had sprung. They had done it. They had walked right into the cage." "I appreciate you telling me," I said. "Because of the situation I mentioned in my email, I have been expecting this. Can I ask who called?" "They didn't give a name," Sarah said. "It was a woman. She asked to speak to the hiring manager for the inventory role. She said she was a former employer of yours from a private consulting gig. She said she wanted to warn us." "Warn you about what?" I asked. "She said that you have a history of handling funds improperly." Sarah said, "She said there was an incident involving a transfer of $2,000 that went missing. She said you were charismatic but untrustworthy." $2,000, the exact amount from the banknote. They were using the fraudulent transfer, the one they made, as the basis for the lie. They were weaponizing their own crime. "Sarah," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my knuckles were white as I gripped the phone. "That is a fabrication, and I can prove it. But before I do, I need to ask you something very important." "Okay," Sarah said. "You said you received a call. Did you log it?" "Yes," Sarah said. "We log all reference checks. And did the caller leave a number?" "It showed up on the caller ID," Sarah said. "We have it in the system." "Sarah," I said, "I am going to send you a document. It is a notarized affidavit regarding the financial transaction she mentioned, proving that I was not the one who authorized it, but more importantly, the person who called you is currently the subject of a cease and desist order for defamation. By logging that call, You have just provided the evidence needed to prove they are violating the law." There was a silence on the other end. Sarah was processing this. She wasn't just an HR manager anymore. She was a witness in a legal battle. I see," Sarah said. "I am not asking you to hire me right this second," I said. "I know this is a lot, but I am asking you to save that call log. Please, do not delete it." "We won't," Sarah said. Her voice was firmer now. She sounded angry, not at me, but at the situation, at the woman who had lied to her. "We keep everything, Alice, and, honestly," the caller sounded vindictive. "It didn't sit right with me. That is why I'm calling you instead of just closing the file."
"Thank you, Sarah," I said. "You have no idea how much that means." We hung up. I sat there for a moment, the silence of the apartment buzzing around me. They had done it. They had called a recorded line. They had called a company with a documented HR process. They had used a specific, falsifiable lie about the $2,000, and Sarah had the caller ID. I texted Dana, 2 words, "Got them." The email from Sarah at Northgate arrived at 9 in the morning, 2 days after the call. It was brief, corporate, and contained an attachment that looked like a simple spreadsheet screenshot. But to me, it was gold dust. "Alice, per your request, and in light of the legal context you provided, our legal team has authorized me to share the following log entry regarding the call received on Tuesday. We have redacted the employee ID of the intake coordinator, but the timestamp and caller ID source are preserved." I opened the attachment. It was a row of data from their CRM system. Date: February 10th. Time: 10:14 a.m. Caller ID: P. Sanchez. Mobile. Duration: 4 minutes 12 seconds. Notes: Caller ID'd as Linda, former consulting client. Alleged candidate A. Sanchez has police history regarding theft from family. No case number provided when asked. Caller tone: concerned. Warned of risk. P. Sanchez mobile. I read aloud. P for Peter, my father's cell phone plan. Linda was using his phone, or he was sitting right there while she made the call. It linked both of them, and there it was in black and white. Alleged candidate has police history. That was a specific, factual claim. And it was a lie. I had no police history. I had never been arrested, charged, or even questioned by stating it as a fact to a potential employer. They had crossed the line from concerned opinion to demonstrable defamation. I forwarded the email to Dana immediately. Dana replied within minutes. "This is it. This is the smoking gun. I am sending a preservation letter to Northgate's legal department immediately. We are locking this evidence down." A preservation letter was a formal legal demand that Northgate keep everything. The call log. The notes, any internal emails discussing the call, any voicemail if it existed. It meant they couldn't delete it as part of a routine system purge. For the first time in 10 years, I had an institutional trail. I wasn't just a crazy daughter complaining about her parents. I was a plaintiff with third-party verification. Northgate, a multi-million-dollar company, was now a witness to my mother's sabotage. But a smoking gun wasn't enough to win the war. I needed armor. Dana had told me to build a reputation packet. It sounded simple, but the reality was grueling. It meant reaching out to people I hadn't spoken to in years, old bosses, managers from temp jobs, the supervisor from the coffee shop where I worked in grad school, and asking them to vouch for me. It felt humiliating. It felt like I was begging strangers to tell the world I wasn't a criminal. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, staring at a draft email to a woman named Karen, who had managed the bookstore I worked at 5 years ago. "Hi, Karen. I hope you are well. I am currently in a legal dispute regarding false claims about my employment history. I was wondering if you would be willing to write a brief letter confirming that during my 2 years at the bookstore. I was never disciplined for theft or financial mishandling. I deleted financial mishandling. It sounded too specific, like I was denying something that had actually happened. Confirming that I was an honest and reliable employee. I hit send, then I did it again, and again, every time I hit send.
I felt a little piece of my dignity chip away. Normal people didn't have to ask for these letters. Normal people just listed references and moved on. I had to build a fortress of paper just to apply for an entry-level job, but the responses started coming in, and they were surprising. Karen replied, "Of course, Alice. You were one of my best openers. Who is saying otherwise? Sending a letter on letterhead tomorrow. My old manager from the transcription service. Alice. You were the only one who never missed a deadline. Happy to help. Even David, the supervisor who had warned me about the call, sent a notarized statement. Alice Sanchez was trusted with access to the supply inventory and front office cash box. No discrepancies were ever noted during her tenure. I printed them out, one by one. I put them in a binder. It was pathetic that I needed it. But looking at the stack of positive words, I felt a strange sense of relief. I wasn't who my parents said I was. Other people saw me, the real me. That evening, I went to Maribel's house to show her the binder. She was sitting at the dining table, sorting through a box of old papers that smelled like cedar and thyme. "Look," I said, putting the binder down. 7 letters, all positive, no theft. Maribel nodded, but she didn't smile. She was focused on a document in her hand. "I found the mediator's notes," she said. "What mediator?" 3 years ago, Maribel said, "when I first suspected they were calling your jobs. I went to the Family Services Center. I thought, maybe if we had a mediation, if a professional spoke to them, they would stop. I never got them to go. Your father refused. But I spoke to the intake counselor. She handed me a sheet of paper with the letterhead of the County Family Services. It was dated June 12th, 2023. Intake notes. Client, Maribel Sanchez. Client reports concern that her son and daughter-in-law are interfering with her granddaughter's employment. Client states, they are targeting her work prospects to force dependence. They want her to lose her housing so she has to move back in. Client fears financial abuse if granddaughter returns to family home." I read the words, targeting her work prospects to force dependence. "You said that 3 years ago," I said. "You predicted exactly what they are doing now with the landlord." "I did not predict it," Maribel said. "I recognized it. It is what they did to your Aunt Sophia when she tried to leave her husband. They cut off her support until she crawled back. It is their playbook." "This is evidence," I said. "It proves this isn't a new conflict. It proves you have been worried about this specific behavior for years. It establishes a timeline." "Put it in the binder," Maribel said. The binder was growing. It was becoming a weapon, but my parents were evolving too. 2 days later, I applied for a remote data entry job. I used the trap number again. I used the reputation packet. I felt prepared. But when the call came to the trap line, it wasn't my mother's voice, and she didn't claim to be a family member. I listened to the recording Dana sent me. "Hi, I'm calling regarding Alice Sanchez. I used to work with her at a freelance project last year. I just wanted to give a heads up. She's great with data. But we had some issues with confidentiality. Sensitive client info got leaked. I'd be careful giving her system access." The voice was distorted, maybe by a bad connection, or maybe intentionally, but the cadence was familiar. It was my mother's sister, my Aunt Clara. "They are outsourcing," I told Dana on the phone. That was my aunt, and the story changed. It wasn't theft this time. It was confidentiality breach. They are tailoring the lie to the job. "That is sophisticated," Dana said. "Theft scares retail employers. Data leaks scare corporate employers. They are adapting. It is like a virus," I said. "It finds a new host. It finds a new angle. How do we stop it if they keep changing the story and the caller?" "We increase the pressure," Dana said. "Civil court is slow. We need something faster. I want you to go to the police." "The police?" I froze. "Dana, they haven't physically hurt me. The police will laugh at me. They will say it is a civil matter." "We aren't asking them to arrest anyone yet," Dana said. "We are creating a record. In many jurisdictions, repeated interference with employment can be classified as criminal harassment or stalking. We need a police report number, It signals to your parents, and to any judge, that you feel unsafe. I didn't want to go. I hated the idea of walking into a police station and trying to explain that my mother was ruining my job interviews. It sounded petty. It sounded like a teenager complaining about being grounded. But I trusted Dana. The precinct was cold and smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I waited for 40 minutes on a hard plastic bench. Finally, an officer called my name, Officer Miller. He looked bored. "What can I do for you?" he asked, leading me to a desk. "I need to file a report for harassment and tortious interference," I said. Officer Miller sighed. "Is this a domestic dispute? Boyfriend? Ex-husband?" "My parents," I said. He stopped typing and looked at me. "Your parents are harassing you?" "Yes. They are systematically contacting my employers and making false allegations of theft and criminal history to prevent me from working. They have called my landlord. They are trying to force me to lose my housing." "Look, miss," Miller said, leaning back, "that sounds like a civil matter. It is not illegal for your parents to not like you. It is illegal to impersonate a former employer," I said. "It is illegal to defame someone to cause financial damages. And it is illegal to harass someone." I opened my binder. I laid out the Northgate call log. I laid out the transcript of the voicemail where my mother admitted to the list. I laid out the cease and desist letter. "I have evidence," I said. "I am not asking you to arrest them today. I am asking you to document that I'm reporting this harassment, so that if they escalate, there is a paper trail." Officer Miller looked at the Northgate log. He looked at the P. Sanchez Mobile caller ID. He looked at the notes. "Alleged candidate has police history." "They told this company you have a police record?" Miller asked. "Yes. Do I?" Miller typed my name into his computer. He stared at the screen for a moment, then he typed something else. He frowned. "No," he said. "You are clean. Not even a speeding ticket in this system." "Exactly," I said. "They are lying to cause me harm." Miller's attitude shifted. He wasn't bored anymore. He saw the documentation. He saw the organization. Cops liked evidence. "Okay," he said. "I will take the report. Harassment, interference. We will generate a case number. You can give that to your lawyer." He started typing. I watched him work, feeling a knot loosen in my chest. It was happening. I was being believed. Then, a woman from the records clerk desk walked by. She was carrying a stack of files. She glanced at me, then stopped. She looked at Officer Miller's screen. "Alice Sanchez?" she asked. I looked up. "Yes." "Date of birth, May 12th, 92? "Yes." The clerk frowned. "That is weird. I remember that name." My heart skipped a beat. "Why?" "You came in here. Must have been 3 or 4 years ago," she said. "To give a voluntary statement about a domestic incident, financial dispute." "No," I said. "I have never been in this station before today." The clerk looked at me, puzzled. "I am pretty sure it was a weird case. Parents claimed some money went missing from a joint account, but they didn't want to press charges. They just wanted a statement of repayment on file. The daughter came in and signed it, said she would pay it back. The room went silent. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to get louder. "I never signed anything," I said. My voice sounded far away. "I never came here." Officer Miller looked at the clerk. "Pull it. It will take a while to find the physical file," she said. "It is in archives." "Pull it," Miller said. I waited. It took an hour. An hour of sitting on that plastic bench. My hands sweating. My mind racing. A statement of repayment. It was the bank fraud. The money they moved through my account when I was 19. They had created a fake police event to legitimize it. The clerk came back with a thin file folder. She handed it to Officer Miller. He opened it. "Here it is," he said. "Dated August 14th, 2022. Voluntary statement regarding family funds. Signed by Alice Sanchez." He turned the paper around so I could see it. It was a standard police form, handwritten in blue ink. I, Alice Sanchez, Acknowledge that I took funds from the family account without permission for personal use. I agree to repay the amount of $2,000 over the next 24 months. This statement is given voluntarily to resolve the matter without criminal charges. At the bottom was a signature, Alice Sanchez. I stared at it. It looked like my signature. It had the same loop on the A, the same sharp S, but it was wrong. The slant was too vertical. I dragged my Z at the end. This one curly-cued up. That is not my signature, I said. I wasn't here. In August 2022. I was living in Chicago. I have a lease to prove it. I wasn't even in the state. Officer Miller looked at the signature, then at me. Someone came in here, the clerk said quietly. She had ID, or someone who looked like you had ID. My mother, I whispered. She looks like me. If she had my old expired license, or if she just talked her way past a busy desk officer. This is identity theft, Officer Miller said. His voice was heavy now. Impersonating another person to file a false police report, forging a signature. I felt the tears come then, not polite tears, ugly, hot tears that burned my face. It wasn't just the job. It wasn't just the money. They had stolen my name. They had walked into a police station, pretended to be me, and confessed to a crime I didn't commit. Just so they would have a piece of paper to hold over my head forever. They had manufactured my guilt. I want a copy, I said, wiping my face. I want a copy of that statement, and I want to add identity theft and forgery to my report. Officer Miller nodded. Yes, ma'am. You absolutely do. I walked out of the station holding the copy of the forged confession. It felt radioactive. Maribel was waiting in the car. She saw my face and opened the door. I collapsed into the passenger seat. They forged my signature, I choked out. They filed a police report pretending to be me, confessing to stealing the money they laundered. Maribel took the paper from my hand. She looked at it. She looked at the date. August, she said. That was the summer you didn't come home for Dad's birthday. They were furious. They are monsters, I said. Who does this? Who does this to their own child? People who cannot survive without control, Maribel said. They created a leash. If you ever tried to leave, they could pull this out and say, look, she confessed to the police. We saved her from jail. She reached over and held my hand. Her grip was tight. But Alice, she said, they made a mistake. What mistake? They did it in a police station, she said. Forgery on a government document is a felony. Filing a false report is a crime. They didn't just play dirty family games this time. They broke the law, and we have the proof. I looked at the forged signature again. It was the weapon they had built to destroy me. But now, it was the weapon that could destroy them. I feel sick, I said. I feel violated. I know, Maribel said. But you are not helpless. You just found the key to the cell. We drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past the window. I felt hollowed out, exhausted by the depth of their betrayal. When I got to my apartment, I sat on the couch in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I just watched the streetlights cast shadows on the floor. My phone buzzed. It was an email notification, but not a new email. It was a forward. It was from Jason, the recruiter at Hathaway, the one who had ghosted me at the very beginning of this nightmare. Subject, FWD, voicemail. Alice, I wasn't sure if I should send this, but after your email about the family dispute, I thought you should have it. This was left on my direct line the morning we pulled your offer. It came from a block number. I mistakenly thought it was relevant. I apologize. Attached was an audio file. Voicemail _020226.mp3. I put the phone on the coffee table. I pressed play. The room filled with the sound of static. And then, my mother's voice. Hi, this is a message for the hiring manager. I'm calling regarding Alice Sanchez. I'm her mother. I know this is unorthodox, but I had to call. Alice is struggling right now. She's not well. She has a history of episodes. And when she gets stressed, she takes things, money, valuables. We're trying to get her help. But I'd hate for you to get hurt like we did. Please, for your own sake, don't put her in a position of responsibility. She just can't handle it. Her voice broke at the end. It sounded so painful, so genuine, so full of loving concern. I'd hate for you to get hurt like we did. The message ended. I sat in the dark, listening to the silence. She wasn't protecting people from me. She was protecting her ownership of me. And she was willing to burn every bridge I ever built to keep me on her island. I looked at the forged police report on the table. I looked at the email from Jason. I had the smoking gun. I had the body. I picked up the phone and texted Dana. I have the forgery. And I have the recording. We are done waiting. The fluorescent lights in Dana Klein's conference room hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency. On the table between us lay 2 pieces of paper. One was the police statement from August 2022, the confession I had supposedly signed admitting to stealing family funds. The other was my lease agreement from the same year, signed in blue ink by my own hand. Dana held a magnifying glass, hovering over the signatures like a jeweler inspecting a diamond for flaws. "It is good," Dana said, her voice devoid of emotion. "I have to give them that. It is very good. If you are just a desk sergeant trying to get through a shift, you do not question this." "But it is not me," I said. I was leaning forward, my elbows on the table, staring at the loops and curves of my own name until they started to look like alien symbols. "Look at the A. Dana. I cross my A low. Always have. It is a habit from Catholic school. This one? The cross is high. It is jaunty." "I see it," Dana said. She set the magnifying glass down. "And the S in Sanchez. You write yours with a sharp bottom loop. This one is round. It is softer." "My mother has round handwriting," I said. "She writes like a schoolteacher." "The problem," Dana said, leaning back in her creaking leather chair, "is that handwriting analysis is not exact science. It is opinion. A jury might look at this and see a match. A forensic expert will charge us $5,000 to write a report that says it is inconclusive but probable forgery. It raises suspicion. Alice, but it does not guarantee a win. It is not DNA." I felt a surge of frustration. So they can just walk into a police station, become me, confess to a crime, and I can't prove it? "We can prove you were in Chicago," Dana said. "We have your lease. We have credit card receipts from that week. We can prove physical impossibility. That is stronger than the handwriting. But the signature itself, it is a ghost. It is meant to confuse." She slid the papers back into the folder. "But we have enough to cast doubt," she continued, "and combined with the call logs from Northgate, the pattern is undeniable. We are moving forward." "What do I do in the meantime?" I asked. "I can't just sit here waiting for them to call the next employer. I have to apply for jobs. I have to eat." Dana nodded. "Then we stop hiding. We stop hoping they won't call. And we assume they will. We control the narrative before they do." That afternoon, I sat in my apartment and drafted the hardest paragraph I had ever written. It was a statement for future employers. Dana had advised me to keep it clinical, no emotion, no, "my parents are evil," just facts. To hiring manager, please be advised that I am currently the target of a harassment campaign involving a family member who has made false claims to previous prospective employers. Legal counsel is engaged, and a police report has been filed regarding identity misuse and defamation. Documentation proving the falsity of these claims, including call logs and sworn affidavits, is available upon request. I ask only that you judge me on my professional merits and references. I read it over. It felt heavy. It felt like admitting I was damaged goods. Who wants to hire the girl with the harassment campaign? It sounded messy. It sounded like drama, but it was better than the alternative. It was a shield. It said, "I am not hiding. I am fighting." I saved the document as a_Sanchez_statement.pdf. It was my new reality. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Sarah from Northgate Supply. I picked up, expecting bad news. I expected her to say that the legal department had spooked, that they couldn't hire someone with baggage. "Hi, Alice," Sarah said. Her voice was bright, professional. "I have some news. We want to offer you the inventory coordinator position." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Sarah, that is wonderful. Thank you. The offer is contingent on the final background check clearing, which we expect it will," Sarah said. "And obviously, given the conversation we had, we are disregarding the phone call from the former client." "I appreciate that more than I can say," I said. "Alice," Sarah said, her tone dropping a notch. "There is something else. I wasn't going to tell you, but I think you need to know for your legal situation." "What is it?" "When the woman called, the one who claimed you stole $2,000, she didn't just stop there. I kept her on the line because I was trying to get a name. She started listing other places you had supposedly stolen from." "What places?" I asked. "She mentioned a logistics firm, which I see on your resume," Sarah said. "But then she mentioned a high-end boutique called the Gilded Lily in downtown. She said you worked there 3 years ago and were fired for taking scarves and jewelry." I frowned. "The Gilded Lily? I have never worked at a boutique in my life. I don't even shop at boutiques." "I figured," Sarah said, "because it is not on your resume. And honestly, Alice, that is what tipped me off. If she had stuck to the $2,000, I might have been worried. But the boutique story sounded rehearsed. It sounded like she was reading from a script of bad things Alice has done. It made her less credible." I thanked Sarah again and hung up. I sat there, processing the lie, the Gilded Lily. It wasn't just that they were malicious. They were sloppy. They were stitching together a Frankenstein monster of accusations. They were taking the $2,000 kernel of truth, which was actually their fraud, and mixing it with complete fabrications just to see what would stick. It was terrifying, but it was also a weakness. If I could prove I never worked at that boutique, I could prove the caller was a liar. One lie exposes the whole rot. But the fraud was deep. It wasn't just phone calls. It was paper. It was my name on documents I had never seen. The next morning, Maribel drove me to the city to meet with a specialist Dana had recommended. His name was Mr. Vance, and he was an identity misuse attorney. His office was sterile, no wood paneling, just glass and steel and white noise machines. He was a man who dealt in numbers and data breaches. Not family drama. I told him everything. The police report, the bank transfers, the boutique lie. "Mr. Vance listened, taking notes on a tablet. "You have a problem, Ms. Sanchez," he said efficiently, "but it is not the problem you think you have. You think you have a reputation problem. You actually have a data integrity problem." "What do you mean?" "Your parents have been using your identity as a financial instrument for at least a decade," he said. "The bank transfers in college? That is commingling of funds. The police report? That is assuming your identity to create a legal record. If they are willing to do that, you have to assume they have done more." He turned the tablet around to show me a checklist. "We need to go scorched earth," he said. "You need to freeze your credit with all 3 bureaus immediately. You need to request a check systems report to see if any bank accounts have been opened in your name that you don't know about. You need to audit your Social Security earnings record to make sure no one is working under your number." "They would do that?" I asked. "Open accounts? Control is an addiction," Mr. Vance said. "If they opened a credit card in your name 10 years ago, used it, and paid it off, they consider that helping you build credit, but it also means they have a line of credit in your name that they can max out the moment you disobey them. It is a financial kill switch." I felt cold. I thought about the keepsake box of garbage they sent me. Return what you took. "We are going to send dispute letters for everything," Mr. Vance said. "We are going to lock down your identity so tight that if they try to buy a stick of gum in your name, an alarm goes off. It costs money to do all this, I said quietly. I am just starting a new job. We will structure the fees, Mr. Vance said. But Alice, you cannot afford not to do this. They have the keys to your house. We need change the locks. I left his office feeling overwhelmed but armed. I spent the next 4 hours on the phone, freezing, locking, disputing. Every confirmation number felt like a brick I was placing in a wall between me and them. That night, I went to Maribel's for dinner. I was exhausted. I wanted soup and silence, but Maribel was agitated. She was pacing the kitchen, which was unlike her. She usually sat like a queen on her throne. "Grandma, what is it?" I asked. "Are you feeling okay?" "I am fine," she said sharply. Then she sighed and leaned against the counter. "No, I am not fine. I am worried." "About the lawsuit?" "About the retaliation." She said, "Alice, you are fighting back. You are filing police reports. You are hiring lawyers. They are going to realize that you are not just a rebellious child anymore. They are going to realize you are a threat. That is the point," I said. "Yes," Maribel said. "But when they realize they cannot break you, they will look for the person who is helping you. They will look for the weak link." She pointed to herself. "I am 82 years old. Alice. I have a tremor in my hand. I forget names sometimes. It is normal aging." She looked at me, her eyes dark and fierce. "If they cannot get to you, they will come for me. They will say I am senile. They will say I am being manipulated by my unstable granddaughter. They will try to take control of my finances. They will try to put me under a guardianship. I won't let them," I said, horrified. "You are the sharpest person I know." "It does not matter what is true," Maribel said. "It matters what they can argue in court. If they file a petition claiming I am incompetent, they can freeze my assets. They can lock up the trust I made for you. They can make it so I cannot pay for your lawyer." "They would sue their own mother?" "They would sue God if he got in their way," Maribel said. She walked over to the table and picked up the employment calls folder. She pulled out a document I hadn't seen before. It was a ledger, handwritten on green accounting paper. "I need you to see this," she said, "because this is the real reason they are doing this. This is the motive." I looked at the ledger. It was a record of loans. June 2015. Loan to Peter for business expansion, $40,000. January 2018. Loan to Peter for home renovation, $25,000. March 2021. Loan to Peter for tax liability, $15,000. I did the math in my head. $80,000. "They borrowed $80,000 from you?" I asked. "Borrowed," Maribel scoffed. "They have never paid back a cent. Every time I ask, they say things are tight. They say they are investing it for the family future." "But they live in a huge house," I said. "They drive new cars. They go on vacations." "They live on debt," Maribel said. "And they live on my money." She tapped the paper. "Here is the secret. Alice, if I die, or if I get sick, who becomes the executor of my estate?" "My father," I said. "He is your only son." "No," Maribel said. "I changed my will 6 months ago. You are the executor. You are the sole beneficiary." The room went silent. "Me?" "Yes," Maribel said. "And that means if I die, you get this ledger, you get the legal right to call in these debts, you get to see exactly how much of my money they have spent." "They owe the estate," I said, realizing the implication. If I am in charge, I could force them to sell their house to pay back the estate. "Exactly," Maribel said. Unless I am incompetent." I finished the sentence. "Unless I am a thief, unless I have a history of financial mishandling and police records that prove I can't be trusted with money." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The smear campaign wasn't just about controlling me. It wasn't just about spite. It was a preemptive legal strategy. They are discrediting me now, I said, my voice rising, so that if you die and I try to enforce the will, they can go to a judge and say, Your Honor, you can't let Alice be the executor. She is a known thief. She has a police record. She is unstable. They are building a case to strip me of my inheritance rights before I even have them. It is a preventative strike, Maribel said. They are stealing your reputation to protect their theft of my money. It is all about money, I said, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. All the love, all the protection, all the concern, it is just $80,000. It is always about money with them, Maribel said. But now you know, and knowing is the only way we win. Grandma, I said, standing up, I am going to call Dana. We are filing the lawsuit. We are not waiting for another call. We are not waiting for them to attack you. We are striking first. The next week was a blur of paperwork. Dana filed the civil complaint in the county court. Alice Sanchez versus Peter Sanchez and Linda Sanchez. The causes of action were clear. Defamation per se. Tortious interference with prospective economic advantage. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Civil fraud. Related to the identity misuse. We attached the exhibits. Exhibit A, the Northgate call log. Exhibit B, the voicemail. Exhibit C, the forged police report. Exhibit D, the bank statements. It was a public document. Once it was filed, anyone could see it. It was a declaration of war. They will be served by a process server tomorrow, Dana told me. Prepare yourself. The silence is about to end. I went to work at Northgate. I kept my head down. I did my inventory counts. I was a model employee. But every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. On Friday, 3 days after they were served, I didn't get a scream. I got a visitor. I was at home, unpacking groceries. When there was a knock at the door, I looked through the peephole. It wasn't my parents. It was Uncle Mark. Mark was my father's younger brother. He was the nice one, the one who avoided conflict, the one who always tried to smooth things over at Thanksgiving. I opened the door, but I kept the chain on. Alice, Mark said. He looked tired. He was holding a manila envelope. Can I come in? I can't talk to you about the case. Mark, I said. My lawyer said no communication with family. I am not here to fight, Mark said. I am here to bring a message. They want peace. Alice, they want to end this. I hesitated. Then I undid the chain. 5 minutes. Mark walked in and sat on the edge of the couch. He didn't take off his coat. Your dad is in a bad way, Mark said. This lawsuit, the police report allegation. Alice, you are accusing them of felonies. This could ruin them. They ruined themselves, I said. They forged my signature. Mark, they called my job. They know they went too far, Mark said. They are willing to admit that. They want to settle. Settle? I asked. Mark handed me the envelope. They drafted this with their lawyer. It is an offer. I opened it. It was a settlement agreement. Proposed settlement. 1. Peter and Linda Sanchez agree to cease all contact with Alice Sanchez's employers. 2. Peter and Linda Sanchez will pay Alice Sanchez the sum of $5,000 for lost wages. 3. Alice Sanchez agrees to drop all civil claims and withdraw the police report. 4. Alice Sanchez agrees to sign a statement acknowledging that the misunderstanding regarding the family funds was a result of miscommunication and that no theft occurred on either side. 5. Alice Sanchez agrees to a permanent non-disclosure agreement regarding family financial matters and will not contact extended family regarding the dispute. I read it twice. They want me to sign a statement saying I misunderstood? I asked. They want me to say it was a miscommunication, that they forged my signature? It saves face, Mark said. Alice, look, they are your parents. Do you really want to see your father in handcuffs? Do you want to drag your grandmother through a competency hearing? Because they told me, if this goes to court, They are going to have to bring Maribel into it. They are going to have to prove she's being unduly influenced. It was a threat wrapped in a peace offering. Sign this lie, or we attack Grandma. And the $5,000? I asked. That is supposed to cover 10 years of sabotage? It is a gesture, Mark said. Take the money, drop the suit, move on with your life. You have the new job. Why keep picking at the scab? I looked at Mark. He wasn't evil. He was just weak. He wanted the uncomfortable thing to go away. He wanted everyone to pretend the rot wasn't there so we could all have Christmas dinner. Mark, I said, do you know they owe Grandma $80,000? Mark blinked. What? Do you know they forged my name on a police report to cover up money laundering? Mark shifted uncomfortably. Alice, those are heavy words. They are facts, I said. I stood up. You can take this paper back to them. I ripped the settlement offer in half, then I ripped it again. Tell them I do not want $5,000. Tell them I do not want peace. I want the truth. I want a judge to look at that signature and tell the world what they did. Alice, please, Mark said, standing up. Think about the cost. Think about the family. The family is a lie, I said. Get out. Mark left. He looked relieved to go. I locked the door. I was shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. They were scared. The settlement offer proved it. They were trying to buy me off with pocket change and threats because they knew I had the winning hand. I called Dana. They offered a settlement. I tore it up. Good, Dana said. That means they know the evidence is solid. But Alice, be careful. When a narcissist loses control, they don't just give up. They lash out. That night, I went to the grocery store to pick up milk. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. The parking lot was empty, bathed in the orange glow of the streetlights. I walked to my car. I clicked the unlock button on my fob. The lights flashed. I reached for the handle of the driver's side door. It was already open, not wide open, just unlatched, slightly ajar. The dome light was on inside. I froze. I knew I had locked it. I always locked it. I stepped back. Scanning the dark parking lot, I didn't see anyone, just shadows. I walked around the car. The passenger door was locked. The trunk was locked. Only the driver's door. I pulled it open, my heart hammering. I expected to see the seats slashed. I expected to see my dashboard smashed, but the car was pristine. Nothing was stolen. My sunglasses were still in the cup holder. My emergency $10 bill was still in the ashtray. Then I saw it, on the driver's seat. Resting perfectly in the center of the gray fabric was a single object. It was a printed photograph. I picked it up. It was a picture of me. It had been taken today. I was walking out of Northgate Supply, looking down at my phone. It was taken from a distance, maybe from a car across the street. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in black marker, were 4 words. We can reach you. It wasn't a legal threat. It wasn't a settlement offer. It was physical. They had followed me. They had waited until I went into the store. They had popped my lock, probably using a spare key they had kept from when I was in college, a key I forgot existed. They had placed the photo and left. They didn't take anything. They just wanted me to know that my locks didn't matter. My protective orders didn't matter. I stood in the parking lot, holding the photo. The wind bit through my jacket. I realized then that Dana was right. The civil suit was just paper. The police report was just a number. This wasn't about a job anymore. It wasn't about the boutique or the bank account. It was about my life. They were telling me that no matter where I went, no matter how many lawyers I hired, I was still their property. I got into the car and locked the doors. I sat there for a long time, staring at the words, "We can reach you." "Okay," I whispered to the empty car. "You can reach me." I started the engine. "But you can't stop me." The climax wasn't going to be in a courtroom. It wasn't going to be a negotiation. It was going to be a collision. And I was finally ready to stop swerving. The legal system is not designed for catharsis. It is designed for paper. I learned this in the weeks following the filing of Sanchez versus Sanchez. I expected a cinematic showdown, a moment where the gavel banged and the truth rang out like a bell. Instead, I got interrogatories. I got requests for production of documents. I got a calendar full of deadlines that felt like a slow strangulation. My apartment became a warehouse of evidence. The dining table was no longer for eating, it was for sorting. One stack for call logs, one stack for bank statements, one stack for the humiliating letters I had to beg my friends to write, vouching that I was not a criminal. Dana Klein was a steady captain, but she was honest about the weather. "They are going to drag this out," she told me over the phone one Tuesday, her voice tinny through the speaker. "They have hired a firm from the city. Their strategy is to bury us in motions until you run out of money." "I don't have money to run out of," I said. Looking at my bank balance, I was surviving on the last of my savings and the small advance Maribel had insisted I take from the trust, though I hated touching it. "That is what they are counting on," Dana said. "But we have something they don't. We have Northgate." The affidavit from Sarah at Northgate Supply arrived via courier. It was 3 pages long, stapled in the corner. I read it standing in my kitchen, shivering because I had turned the heat down to save $20 on the bill. I, Sarah Jenkins, sworn under penalty of perjury, state as follows. 1. On February 10th, 2026, I received a phone call. 2. The caller identified herself as a former client. 3. The caller stated that the applicant, Alice Sanchez, had a police history and had stolen $2,000 from a previous employer. 4. The caller ID log, attached as Exhibit A, reflects the incoming number as, "It was dry. It was clinical. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever read. It was proof that the sabotage wasn't in my head. It was real. It was recent. And it was malicious. But proof costs money. We need a forensic handwriting expert," Dana said during our next meeting. She tapped the copy of the forged police statement, the one where Alice Sanchez confessed to stealing family funds. "The police are moving slow on the criminal side. If we want to win the civil case, we need an expert to testify that this signature isn't yours." "How much?" I asked. $3,000 for the initial report," Dana said. "More if he has to testify." I felt the air leave my lungs. $3,000 was my rent for 2 months. It was food. It was the difference between safety and the edge. "Can't we just show it to the judge?" I asked. "It looks nothing like my signature." "A judge isn't an expert," Dana said gently. "And your parents will hire their own expert to say, 'It looks inconclusive. We need certainty. We need science.'" I went home and sat on my floor. I looked at the keepsake box of garbage my parents had sent me. I looked at the photo of my car they had left on the seat. "We can reach you." If I didn't pay for the expert, I was betting on luck. If I paid, I was betting on myself. I opened my laptop and transferred $3,000 from the trust account to Dana's firm. It felt like physically cutting off a piece of my arm, but I realized that money wasn't for saving anymore. It was for war. Then, the war took a casualty I wasn't prepared for. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the library, using their printer to scan more documents. When my phone rang, it was Mrs. Gable, Maribel's next-door neighbor. "Alice," she said, and her voice was high and tight. "You need to come. The ambulance is here." I dropped the phone. I didn't even pick up my documents. I ran. The drive to the hospital was a blur of red lights and panic. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I kept thinking, I did this. I dragged her into this. She is 82. I put too much on her. When I sprinted into the emergency room, I found her in Bay 4. She looked small, so incredibly small. The hospital gown swallowed her, and the monitors beeping around her bed seemed loud enough to shatter glass. "Grandma?" I choked out, rushing to her side. She opened her eyes. They were hazy, but they focused on me. She tried to lift her hand, but it was heavy with IV lines. "I am fine," she whispered. Her voice was like dry leaves. She fainted, the doctor said. Stepping out from behind the curtain, he looked tired. Dehydration, high blood pressure, and extreme stress. Her heart rate was through the roof. We need to keep her for observation. Stress. I sat in the plastic chair beside her bed for 6 hours. I watched the heart monitor trace the rhythm of her life. Every beat was an accusation. I was fighting for my reputation, but she was paying for it with her health. Around midnight, the room was quiet. Maribel turned her head to look at me. "Stop looking like you are at a funeral," she said. Her voice was stronger. "I am sorry," I said, and the tears finally spilled over. "I am so sorry. Grandma, we should stop. I should just sign their settlement. I should just move away and change my name. It is not worth this. It is not worth you." Maribel closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them, and the steel was back. "Do not insult me, Alice. I am not—" "You are apologizing for fighting," she said. "You think you did this to me? You think you are the burden?" She took a breath, wincing slightly. "I am the one who should apologize," she said. "I sat in my kitchen for 10 years and wrote notes in a folder while they ate you alive. I watched them chip away at your confidence. I watched them make you feel small. And I did nothing but write it down because I was afraid of losing my son." "You didn't do nothing," I said. "I waited too long," she said. "I let you suffer because I wanted peace. There is no peace with people like them. There is only silence." I reached out and took her hand. It was cold, but her grip was surprising. "You didn't wait," I said. "You prepared. You built the arsenal. Without that folder, without those recordings, nobody would believe me. I would be crazy, Alice. Because of you. I am Alice with the evidence. That is not nothing. That is intervention." Maribel looked at me. A tear leaked from the corner of her eye and tracked into her silver hair. "Then finish it," she said. "Do not let me faint in vain." Maribel was discharged 2 days later. She was weak, needing a walker to get around the house. But her mind was clear. My parents, hearing of her hospitalization, did not come to visit. They did not send flowers. Instead, they saw an opening. The following Tuesday was the monthly meeting of the Briarfield Community Association. It was the center of social gravity in Maribel's neighborhood. It was where the rumors started and where the judgments were passed. I got a text from Mrs. Gable at 7 o'clock in the evening. "Your parents are here, at the meeting. They are talking to the board. You better come." I looked at Maribel. She was sitting in her armchair, a blanket over her knees. "Go," she said. "Take the file." "I can't leave you," I said. "I am not dying tonight," she said. "But your reputation will if you do not go. Take the car." I grabbed the binder, the thick black binder with the letters, the affidavit, and the logs. I drove to the community center with a feeling of cold detachment. I wasn't scared anymore. I was just done. The community center was a brick building that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I walked down the hallway and heard voices coming from the main meeting room. I pushed the heavy double doors open. There were about 30 people inside, sitting on folding chairs. At the front of the room, standing near the podium, were my parents. My father was wearing his good suit. My mother was wearing a cardigan that made her look soft, approachable. She was wiping her eyes with a tissue. "We just don't know what else to do," my mother was saying to the room. Her voice was trembling perfectly. "We tried to keep this private, but now that Maribel is in the hospital, we have to speak up. Alice has been putting terrible pressure on her, financial pressure. We believe she is confusing her grandmother, trying to get access to her accounts." The room murmured. Heads shook in sympathy. Poor Linda. Poor Peter, having to deal with a drug addict daughter. "We found documents," my father added, his voice grave. "Fake legal letters, threats. Alice is unwell. We are trying to get guardianship of Maribel just to protect her from—" "Excuse me," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Every head turned. My parents froze. My mother's tissue hovered halfway to her nose. I walked down the center aisle. My footsteps sounded loud on the linoleum. I didn't look at the neighbors. I looked straight at my parents. "Alice," my father said, his tone shifting instantly to a warning growl. "This is a private meeting." "It is a community association meeting," I said. "And since you are discussing me and my grandmother, I think I have a right to speak." "We are just sharing our concerns," my mother said, her eyes darting around the room, gauging the audience. "Alice, honey, you look tired. You should go home." "I am tired," I said. I reached the front of the room and slammed the black binder onto the table next to them. It made a heavy, authoritative thud. "I am tired of the lies," I said. I opened the binder. "You told these people I am pressuring Maribel for money," I said. Turning to the neighbors, "But the truth is, my parents are currently being sued for defamation and fraud." "She is lying," my father shouted. "She is having an episode." "I have here," I said, lifting the Northgate affidavit, "a sworn statement from the HR department of Northgate Supply. It confirms that on February 10th, a call was made from Peter Sanchez's cell phone. That is you, Dad, falsely claiming I had a police record." I held it up. The official stamp of the notary glinted under the fluorescent lights. "And here," I continued, flipping the page, "is a copy of a police report filed in August 2022, where someone impersonated me and forged my signature to confess to a theft that never happened. We have forensic analysis pending, but we already have proof I was in Chicago that day." The room went silent. The sympathy was evaporating, replaced by the awkward, heavy tension of truth. "This is not a family dispute," I said, my voice steady. "This is a crime, and I have the receipts." "You ungrateful little," my mother started, stepping forward. "Sit down, Linda," a voice said from the back of the room. We all turned. Maribel was standing in the doorway. She was leaning heavily on her walker, Mrs. Gable supporting her arm. She looked pale, but her eyes were blazing. "Mom," my father said, paling, "you shouldn't be here. You're sick." "I am sick of you," Maribel said. She shuffled forward, step by painful step, until she reached the front. She looked at the neighbors, then at her son. "You come here," she said to my father, "and you tell my friends that Alice is exploiting me? When you are the one who borrowed $80,000 from me and never paid it back?" A gasp went through the room. $80,000 was a mortgage in this part of town. "Mom, that was an investment," my father stammered. "We are family." "You are leeches," Maribel said, "and you are scared. You are scared because you know what I did yesterday." She reached into her purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "I updated my trust," she announced to the room. "My lawyer drafted it, and it is filed. It is a simple clause." She looked directly at my mother. "It says that if anyone attempts to challenge my competency, or if anyone tries to coerce me into changing my will, or if my estate is contested by my son, the entire assets of the trust, including my house and my savings, will be immediately liquidated and donated to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital." My father's mouth dropped open. "A dead man's switch," Maribel said. "If you come for me, or if you come for Alice, the money disappears. You get nothing. Zero." The silence was absolute. The financial motive, the $80,000, the house, the inheritance they were trying to protect by discrediting me, was gone, vaporized. My mother looked like she had been slapped. She looked at the paper, then at me. The soft, concerned mother mask melted away, revealing the pure, distilled hatred beneath. "You did this," she hissed at me. "You poisoned her." "I protected her," I said. My father slammed his hand on the table. He didn't look at the neighbors anymore. He didn't care about the facade. "You were never supposed to be above us," he shouted. The words hung in the air. "You were never supposed to be above us." It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the theft. It was about hierarchy. It was about the fact that I had dared to try and be a person separate from them. I had dared to be competent.
I had dared to be happy without their permission. "There it is," I said quietly. "The truth." I closed the binder. I picked it up. "I am done," I said. "I am done being your victim. I am done being your thief. And if you call one more employer, if you touch my car again, if you come near my apartment, I will not just sue you, I will prosecute you." I turned to Maribel. "Ready to go home, Grandma?" "Yes," she said. "I think we are finished here." We walked out. We walked past the stunned neighbors. We walked past my parents, who stood frozen in the wreckage of their own narrative. The parking lot was cold and crisp. The stars were out. I helped Maribel into the car. I put her walker in the trunk. I got into the driver's seat and just sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. I felt light. I felt incredibly, impossibly light. The next morning, I went to Northgate Supply. I met Sarah in her office. "The background check cleared," she said, smiling. "We got the final report this morning. No boutiques, no police record." "I know," I said. She slid the contract across the desk. "Ready to sign?" I looked at the paper. Inventory coordinator, Alice Sanchez. It was just a job. It was a mid-level job in a warehouse, but it was mine. It was the first thing in 10 years that was truly mine. I picked up the pen. I signed my name. I crossed the A low. I looped the S sharp, my signature. "Welcome to the team," Sarah said. "Thank you," I said. I left the office and walked to my car. I had one more stop to make. I drove to the courthouse. I met Dana in the lobby. She had the paperwork ready. "Request for permanent restraining order," she read. "Based on harassment, identity theft, and stalking." "Do you think the judge will grant it?" I asked. "With the police report, the affidavit, and the incident at the community center?" Dana smiled. "I think we have a very strong case. At the very least, it creates a perimeter. If they cross it, they go to jail." I signed the request. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright February sun. The wind was brisk, but it felt good on my face. My parents were still out there. They were still angry. They were still telling their stories to anyone who would listen. The lawsuit would drag on for months. There would be more motions, more depositions, more money spent, but they couldn't reach me. I had the job. I had the truth. I had Maribel. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was the one walking. I got in my car, turned up the radio, and drove forward. Thank you so much for listening to My Parents Told Every Employer I Was a Thief. Grandma had already prepared for that. This story was a journey into the dark reality of family sabotage and the incredible power of documentation. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to use a paper trail to protect yourself from someone you trusted? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more realistic, gripping dramas about justice and revenge, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a part. Until next time, stay safe, keep your records, and never let anyone else write your story.